Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Sugar, let's go easy, shall we? Sugar tax. Tell us about this one.
The head of Public Health England, or one of the directors of Public Health England, Alison Tedstone, appeared before the Health Select Committee today and dropped a veritable bombshell, which was this great report that Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary, has been refusing to publish on the goods and bads of a sugar tax. She told it all today in front of the Select Committee. So, well, guess what? We have done a report on sugar tax, and we reckon it would be hugely effective. It would stop all sorts of people from buying soft drinks, and really the government must bring this in immediately. It's very, very controversial, very unpopular, but the evidence, so say Public Health England, is that it would be effective. There are one or two other extraordinary things that Camilla and I have taken issue with in their report.
Other obesity dangers it cited included the Cocoa Pops monkey, which is used to sell the chocolate breastfeed cereal. Frankly, for years, I do find this, I appreciate the whole fear about the obesity time bomb, but if you're worried about the Cocoa Pops monkey, wouldn't it perhaps be a better idea to ban advertising of sugary foods during school children's viewing time? Second of all, rather than taxing consumers who most of the time can control themselves and aren't downing chocolate bars by the dozen, and indeed, we were saying in the green room, you know, this is basically penalising us all for a few bad apples not being able to eat apples.
As we down chocolate bars by the dozen.
Well, you did have a chocolate bar earlier. But why not tell people who make food to stop putting sugar in it in the first place? I.e. anything you get, you know, a yoghurt full of sugar, a lasagna full of sugar. You don't even know it's there. Baked beans, exactly. Why not get the people at source to stop hiding sugar quite unnecessarily in our diet so that we're eating it without even knowing it?
Is it? If you buy processed food, if it doesn't have salt and sugar in it, it tastes pretty horrible.
Well, maybe it does, but then home-cooked food always tastes better than processed food. Yeah. So the theory should be that in some way, shape or form, with technology being as it is, we should make food that doesn't have the equivalent we keep on hearing of 17 teaspoons full of sugar in it, especially feeding it to our kids.
And Jamie Oliver, who obviously highlighted this, accused of grandstanding on this issue, but he's a dad of lots of kids who's worried about the amount of sugar that his children consume.
Yeah, and he says the government is running scared of big business, of the Coca-Colas of this world, etc., what they don't want to do. There is a very good argument against a sugar tax, and that it is what's known in my trade as highly regressive. In other words, you know, those with not very much money end up paying proportionally to their income far more than a rich person can afford a Diet Coke or a Coke, full-fat Coke, where, you know, someone with far less money would now struggle to, and that is unfair. But
it's the amount that, you know, kids do on the way back from school, pop in, get one, or an energy drink, or multiple energy drinks, all of it's packed in sugar, and you're consuming a lot of it without realising that you're doing it. That's the problem, isn't it?
There are a lot of other ways you can skin this cat, though. There are a lot of clever ways. There's Labour MP, for example, Geraint Davis, who's bringing in a private member's bill tomorrow, which almost certainly won't pass, which has what strikes me as a very good idea of literally labelling up on every single soft drink precisely how many teaspoons of sugar in it. Yeah. If you had that writ large,
I'll put it with the traffic
stop me
light
buying a
system
can of Coke tomorrow.
Well, everyone's looking at traffic lights, aren't they? So I think it's always the sugars now that people are looking at, carbohydrates, of which sugars, and if it's above 10 grams, that is a lot. So you look at a yoghurt, actually, nutritionists say you may as well just be spooning sugar into your mouth, but you think you're eating something healthy because you're eating a yoghurt. It's this kind of mixed messaging on packaging that needs to stop. Let's make it transparent. Let's see exactly what we're putting in our mouth.
OK. Will the government do anything about this or not, do you think, given they've now been exposed?
No, they'll go into a terrible tears. It's very, very unpopular indeed with Tory backbenchers who consider this as a dirty nanny state thing, and who don't like taxes anyway at the best of times, let alone a new tax. So no, they'll sit on their hands for an awful lot longer and wring them a bit longer.
But some of the advertising issues are a bit like tobacco on Formula One, isn't it? It's things that could be tackled, I suppose.
Let's talk about the Daily Mail's front page and the whole story about the sugar tax. We had Jamie Oliver talking about that this week, didn't we, Ian? But this is, well, the good old newspaper story about a secret government report. They're saying a secret government report found that taxing sugar would curb the nation's obesity crisis.
Well, it's interesting, this, and we knew about this report, and today in Parliament it was revealed some of the details of it. It showed actually there was an impetus to have a sugar tax, which is fascinating. Jamie Oliver raised it yesterday, and I speak as a son of a father who was a director of Tate & Lyle, a sugar company. But I've been persuaded that actually we should have a sugar tax because the obesity crisis is so intense here, and it's one of the steps that government needs to take. according to one analysis, a 20% rise in soft drink prices would cut the number of overweight people by 250,000. But it's a bit like the situation with smoking in the 60s and 70s, where we're beginning to understand the damage being caused. This is the #1 health problem worldwide. It's creeping up across the developing world as well, through Africa and Asia, as well as the Americas and Western Europe. And we've got to have a sustained long-term approach with lots of different ways of tackling this, because it's crippling our health service.
Which all sounds very well, and it's through the health service we've discovered that this report, well, we knew it existed, but the implication is that the government were holding back on it because of pressure from the sugar industry. And it has come onto the agenda now. Jamie Oliver, there's that great American documentary, Sugar Rush, documentary on the effect of sugar and its links with obesity. But it's trouble for a government as well, because a massive lobbying power of the sugar industry and its effect on our lives and on the kiddie pressure that you get from sons and daughters wanting more and more of it. A micro reflection of this in Scotland, where the Scottish government has tried to impose a minimum price on alcohol, on the sale of alcohol. It's gone to the courts. It's going to the European courts. The industry is using real muscle to try and stop the government interfering in the market.
But ultimately,
I'm sure the sugar industry will.
But ultimately, they've got to choose, because the costs are so extreme for the health service. 1 in 10 people now there with diabetes, etc., etc. The government has to act, and I think they've been pretty pathetic, politicians, in not taking much tougher actions against the food industry.
Public Health England went ahead and published its sugar report today after the government had blocked publication for months. Not only does the report lay out evidence of sugar's involvement in the UK's obesity and diabetes crisis, it goes further, urging the introduction of a sugar tax. The Prime Minister today admitted he hadn't read the report, despite rejecting the sugar tax out of hand. Tonight, a victory for the sugar lobby, or is the sugar tax really a bad idea?
Also tonight, how is a well-liked and well-respected paediatric doctor able to abuse more than a dozen children with cancer in one of the country's most eminent hospitals? What is the connection between a general election and albino children fearing for their lives? Tanzania has the answer, and it is profoundly disturbing. And birds, newts and toads probably have no particular view on whether Britain stays in the EU or not, but their survival may be getting caught up in the tangled politics of Europe. None other than Boris Johnson's dad will help us explain.
Also tonight, the era of the screenager. Is it stretching their minds through video games or shrinking their contact with real life?
I've been gaming literally since I could actually type on a keyboard.
I used to be in a horrendous pattern.
It's given me a lot of confidence because I've found characters I want to dress up as.
Gaming saved my life.
So, the Prime Minister hasn't read it, but he's already rejected a public health report calling for a sugar tax, which could add up to 20% to the cost of sweet food and drinks. The previously unpublished report from Public Health England says the tax should be part of a package designed to cut consumption of a product that is doing untold harm to the nation's health. Our health and social care correspondent Victoria MacDonald has this report.
Look, how about this? Yeah, that would be a good one.
This was a Channel 4 News experiment, a child's eye view of what's on offer in a high street convenience store. Right bang smack in front of them, it's all sugar.
Get the pink one because inside there is something beautiful.
And today, a long-awaited report confirms we're eating too much of the stuff, and it is bad for our health. More controversially, although somewhat anticipated, the Public Health England document on sugar reduction does recommend a sugar tax. This was immediately rejected by the Food and Drink Federation.
A sugar tax is a misguided move. First of all, it won't work. There's no evidence that consumption falls markedly as a consequence of a sugar tax. It just doesn't work wherever it's been tried. And the other reason is that it's actually going to be regressive. It hits the poor in our society far more than middle-class people, and that can't be right.
The report's publication was sudden. The government had until now refused to publish it or to give a copy to the Health Select Committee.
I do believe we need one strong, hard action made, that is the sugar tax.
And he urged the government to be big and bold. For all the controversy over the past couple of weeks about whether this report even contained a recommendation for a sugar tax and why it wasn't being published and why it wasn't being made available to the Health Select Committee, it turns out that without reading the report, the Prime Minister has already decided that the country does not need a sugar tax. Over and above a sugar tax, the report says to have any effect, reduce price promotions in retail and restaurants, cut marketing of high sugar products to children, and lower sugar content and portion size in everyday food and drinks. In Mexico, researchers say a 10% tax on sugar-sweetened drinks reduced sales by 6% last year. It's thought Norway, Finland, Hungary and France have also seen reduced sales.
There have been so many people from all areas of the medical profession saying we really must have a tax. It does work. It's been proven in other countries to work. We've got to have it here, because if we don't have it, our, specifically children, are going to be in a really sorry state.
About a quarter of all adults and a fifth of 10 and 11-year-olds in this country are obese. Yet by halving our sugar consumption, the authors say it could improve our health and teeth and save the NHS £500 million a year.
Korda Hashem, a nutritionist with campaign group Action on Sugar, is here, and we're joined from Westminster by Ian Wright of the Food and Drink Federation. Ian Wright, does the Federation accept the link between sugar and obesity and other conditions that are reportedly in this report part of the problem?
Well, we absolutely accept that there's an obesity crisis in this country and that it's essential that we prioritise action against that crisis and action that will help children to be less obese going forward. So to that extent, we agree with the report and its thrust.
So you do accept the link between sugar and obesity and the other conditions?
Well, we accept the link between overconsumption of all foods and obesity, and we think it's foolish to demonise one nutrient above the others. And we don't think that that's a very sensible way to tackle the crisis.
Well, talk to me about the other things in fizzy drinks that are doing equal harm to sugar.
Well, I think it's important not to focus on just one nutrient or one category, because what the report says, and I don't know if you've had the chance to read it, but I have, it talks about a multi-layered approach is the only way forward to tackle the obesity crisis. That's what McKinsey said in their report on World Health earlier in the year, and that's what we support.
So sugar's not a particular problem?
I think it's one part of a solution, but there are many other parts to an effective obesity strategy.
Korda Hashem, the link between sugar and obesity, it's merely one part of a whole range of other foodstuffs that are involved.
Well, there's definitely a link between obesity and sugar. There's a link between drinking fizzy drinks and type 2 diabetes, and there's definitely a link that's very clear when it comes to tooth decay. So definitely we need to be reducing it. The Scientific Advisory Committee to the government clearly showed that we need to be reducing our sugar intake to less than 5%. That's only 30 grams for an adult.
So, Ian Wright, as you are sugar, let's just deal with how we're going to deal with sugar, because we can leave all the other foodstuffs you're concerned about. Sugar obviously is one of the elements that's got to be reduced. How do you propose doing it?
Well, can I just say I'm not sugar, I'm all food and drink. But I believe, and I think we all believe, that you need, as I said, a multi-pronged approach. Now, that actually does mean some change in formulation of products. It means where you can't change because sugar's the essential element, like cakes, you need to look at portion size. When McKinsey reported on this, they said that portion size and reformulation were 10 times more likely to have an impact than a sugar tax. I think that's the way to go, but I also think that it's important.
Did McKinsey understand that actually if you put lots of sugar in any size of a portion, it makes you want to have a bigger portion?
Well, I don't think there's any scientific proof of that, actually.
Well, I bet you there is.
Well, there may... Really?
Yes, absolutely,
okay.
100%.
Okay, so, well, I look forward to...
You try it yourself. Try having a small, very sweet cake and see if you want some more.
I look forward to reading about your scientific credentials.
Let's check with somebody who may know. I mean, if you start... well, let's actually deal with the real matter in hand, which is a sugar tax. Does your organisation believe a sugar tax is part of the answer?
We support a sugar tax, or specifically a sugary drinks duty, which is to raise the price of sugary drinks because they are the key contributor, the key source of sugars for teenagers and children, and therefore they need to be reduced. Possibly by increasing their price, you would get people to buy less of them.
So you would keep sugar of all other products out, but deal specifically with fizzy drinks? Okay, well, would you be open to fizzy drinks being targeted with a tax? Ian Wright?
No, and in fact the only previous example of that happening in Mexico is clearly not working, because the government in Mexico today, literally today, has been reported as cutting the tax that they've levied in half because it's not working properly. So the evidence that's been
hang on
adduced
a
on
moment,
this
because
is not
the government of Mexico has also declared that actually obesity has gone down by 10%.
Well, they've also introduced a whole range of other issues, so how they disaggregate those from the tax, I don't know. What we know is that sugar taxes don't work, that they are regressive because they attack the poor in our communities more than the middle classes, and that we need a range of issues, a range of measures to tackle obesity.
What do you make of the Mexican situation? I mean, we thought that was a good example, but clearly not.
No, it's definitely a good example. It has reduced the amount of sugar in that population, even after it's been only introduced for a year. The government is reviewing whether they should continue, and I think that the reason why they're reviewing it is because there is a lot of lobby and pressure from the food companies to get rid of it.
When you talk about pressure from the food companies, what do you make of today? Because we have the Prime Minister not even reading a report and saying no to the sugar tax. Do you think that is because the government has concluded that a sugar tax is a bad idea, or because the sugar lobby have won the day?
Possibly the sugar lobby have won the day, but perhaps we think they should really have considered the evidence before coming up with a conclusion like this.
I mean, even you, as somebody involved in the commerce of all this, Ian Wright, must be very concerned that the government are able to decide their reaction to this report without even reading it.
Well, I commend the report to the Prime Minister. I enjoyed reading it, and I think it's interesting, and I think it's an important contribution to an important debate. I don't know whether the Prime Minister has read it or not.
Well, he says he hasn't.
Well, I rather suspect that his officials will have read it, and I suspect that they will have looked at the evidence for the sugar tax and decided it doesn't stack up.
Why do you think the government held up on this tax, on this report? Was it because they didn't want discussion of the sugar tax?
I've no idea about that, and certainly, although I mean we welcome production of the report, we've had long conversations with PHE over it over the last 4 or 5 months, and I think having it out there actually helps the debate. So it's certainly nothing to do with us that it wasn't published earlier.
What did you get from the fact that the government have held up this report for months?
Well, we were really disappointed, and we did pressure them, particularly in this week, after having the Health Committee and verdicts from Jamie Oliver and others. I think that all this pressure has resulted in them taking this report out.
Korda Hashim and Ian Wright, thank you both very much indeed.
I've been getting away with it all my